So first off, I'm going to just say for everyone that's there, I just want to say welcome everyone. My name is Brooke Myatt. I am the department chair for Rowan College of Burlington County Entertainment Technologies Department. I am the chair for two majors at RCDC that are Associate of Applied Science majors. One is Video and Digital Media, and the other is Sound Recording Engineering. And tonight we are bringing you an awesome program, the Guggino family. And I think what's really captivated me about this story was that part of our own RCBC family, Alexandra O'Neill, is our Rowan's, I guess she's our Rowan's coordinator, director, relation manager, anything that you can think of about going and transferring to Rowan College at Burlington County and then transferring directly to the 2+2 program that we have, or our 3+1 programs. Allie is the person to meet with. She's amazing and she's helped so many of our students. And I just want to say that if I didn't connect with her and hear about her amazing family and background and her interesting stories of her youth, that I said I need to meet these people, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you, Allie, and Allie's on this call as well. So thanks so much for putting this together and being here with me. Great. So, well, I have to say, when she was telling me a little bit about you, and then finally we all three of us met, your resumes are absolutely, amazing. And I mean, we could sit here and probably talk all day about your lives, but I kind of wish we could have an elevator pitch if I could go through each one of you. And I'm sure each one of you in your history of film production, TV pitching have all done an elevator pitch at some point. If we could just do an elevator pitch, and I'm going to start with, we'll call you the Godfather tonight, Tom.
Okay.
So if you could start off and give me an elevator pitch of your background.
Thank you, and this is very exciting to be here tonight. My career started, of course, in show business, and I had a comedy team act with my wife, Deanie, who unfortunately has passed on, but she was the funny one. And we performed for 9 years. Up in New York and out in LA, and we did the Comedy Store in LA and wrote for CBS television. And it was an excellent training ground, performing every night. We moved back here to the East to start a family, and we were successful. You're seeing them right now. And I started my own production company. And at that time, I was doing corporate videos and commercials, and produced over 400 commercials and learned about marketing. And what I discovered while I was directing was the fact that I was coaching people on camera. And I really enjoyed that. So I went more on the coaching side and became a presentation coach. And that led to teaching at Rutgers and at LaSalle, at University of Pennsylvania. And also I'm currently on the faculty of the doctorate in management in strategic leadership at Jefferson University. And what was interesting about it is I was able to bring my experience as a performer to every one of those levels and use what I had learned in show business for presenting to create my own presentation business. And I was very fortunate, and you saw the book, Brooke. It's called Present Connect, and it's about my coaching and presentations. There it is. Show the book. That's the talk show. And what is interesting is it's all connections. Last October, I was interviewed for the book on PBS 39 with Grover Silcox. Now, Grover Silcox used to be a comedian. He is now a host of Counterculture on PBS 39. And he interviewed me for the book. And it was great fun. So it's interesting the connections that you create. And as you look back, you can see that. But when you first start, you really can't understand where everything is going to come from. So that's me on my elevator. This is my floor. I'm getting off.
You got it. Michael, since you're live on camera here, why don't we jump to your intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Michael. I'm the eldest of the children. I'm a composer and sound engineer, musician. I've been doing that for about 20 years now. I majored in philosophy and ended up in the audio world.
Yes.
Because it was a better way to make money. Now I do everything from composing music for films, TV, you name it. I do a lot of field audio for lots of TV shows like Breaking Amish, Ghost Adventures. I do an online show with Claire Saffitz called Dessert Person. I've also made music for all of those shows. I do a lot of post-production audio work as well. I've played music in many different bands. Actually, if you remind me at the end of the presentation, I made a Spotify playlist of all the music I've made and released, so I will post a link to it if you guys want to listen to it. And also, I don't know. I think I named everything I do. I'm a very busy person. Oh wait, I run a
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I run a podcast network. I actually do one of the podcasts I do is with Dave, my brother. I'm on 3 of the podcasts. I produce a lot of them, and we put them out and distribute them, which is really fun. We started doing that over the pandemic. Is that everything? I don't know. I think I do a lot of stuff.
One of my favorite shows, The Real Housewives of New Jersey. One of my favorite shows.
Yes, I did. So I worked on a couple.
Forget that. We're all
I worked on a couple of seasons of The Housewives of New Jersey. I worked on the infamous season before Joe Guggino, how do you say their last name? He went to jail. So that was a fun season.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
No worries.
It's really weird hanging out with Teresa and Joe. I don't recommend it.
Well, I thank you. And definitely I'm going to put a feather in my, just a reminder to myself actually about your podcasting, because I'd love to have you come and talk to my radio students. They're doing podcasting right now, and I'd love for you to come and talk to them. So that'd be really great if you would be willing to do that. I'm going to jump over to your brother, David, right now. And David kind of came into the entertainment world from a little bit different perspective, not kind of behind the scenes, but in front of the scenes. And I just your resume is just wonderful with being a member of the Joffrey Ballet. So why don't you talk to us about that, David?
Yeah, I mean, basically in the elevator pitch, I started tap dancing around New Jersey. Not literally, they didn't have me as an act, but it was like I saw Fred Astaire and I wanted to take that, and that slowly developed into me wanting to pursue dance as a career. I still loved to act in sports and everything else, but I ended up in New York at Marymount Manhattan, and then the Joffrey Ballet, New School University. And my junior year, I was touring nationally and internationally with a company called Momix, which is very much like Cirque du Soleil, just crazy stuff. And what got me into the company, honestly, was I looked like one of the guys leaving the company, and I could break dance, and I didn't know that the director loved breakdancing. They just said, bring your knee pads and do what you do. So, but yeah, so out of that, I performed a bunch. So I was doing contra dance with dance companies, then went into musical theater and joined Actors Equity. And then some television, some Regis and Kelly's. I think you can look them up. There's a Solid Gold dance out there and a Thriller dance out there. And I had one other one. It was the easiest money I ever made, but it was fun. And that started to move. I always wanted to be creative, kind of, as you can tell, in the family. And I started to get more into choreography, and I was working for Chase Brock's company. He's a Broadway choreographer now, and I just kind of didn't have the patience or time to want to be the dancer anymore. So I started choreographing, and then slowly just really realized that I had a passion for film and television, and that writing was a part of our family, and film was a part of our family and story and all that stuff. So I just, in the past 5-6 years, I started switching to becoming a director, writer, editor now, especially, and having my own production company, and kind of turned around and said, isn't that funny? I'm doing exactly what my dad did. Didn't realize that was going to happen, but it was okay. I mean, I'm also more into writing my own work and wanting that to get produced through TV pilots, possibly film. So I've written about 5 or 6 different TV pilot scripts and have just been pursuing that and shooting trailers for them and getting myself organized to really be able to pitch to other people while we all trade work in between, you know. And one of those things, I don't know if it's a good segue into what we're all here to talk about as to what the production company that I do is I have a production company that I can use to make money for myself by doing videos, promos, pretty much whatever you need, writing for you, directing, editing, or hiring someone who's better than me to do it, but me still getting paid, and still pursue what I'm doing and getting my scripts in front of like a producer at Fox right now and another producer at CBS, and building that network. So that is eventually where hopefully I'll just be doing that. And I still teach dance on the side once or twice a week, which is its own reward. I teach your children. Take them back, please.
I gotta tell my 8-year-old that his hip hop dance class will definitely lead him to good things. So there you go.
That's it.
My son loves it. So, you know, what's interesting to me is each one of you touched on, I started here, then I went here and here and here, and it's all kind of balanced around production, and all of you are very multifaceted. And I think one of the things I hear from my students, you know, that they come in, they say, I'm not really sure what I want to do in video, digital media, or sound, but I know I want to do something, but I just don't know what that is. What advice, because each one of you has jumped around and has probably had, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 different career paths. I mean,
Yeah.
And any of you can jump in and talk about this, if any of the panelists, about, you know, what kind of advice would you tell these students that are coming in right now to school saying, I know I want to do something, I'm just not sure the avenue. What should I be doing?
I mean,
Well, yeah, David.
I mean, what I find is the same thing that all students kind of come up to. So you're trying to get out there. This is the first time on your own, and there's lots of unknowns. One of the great things that I know, I was listening to a podcast with Mark Maron, and he was interviewing a comedian. And even in my later transition, this helped. The comedian was sitting out front of a comedy thing that he had just finished, and he didn't know what to do. And he said, money aside, just don't even think about the money. What would I want to do? And let the question sit. You don't have to have an answer, as many times as my dad told me when I was having issues like that, and allow yourself to find the thing that turns you on. But if you're already there and you know there's part of it, you get a chance to try all the stuff and say, I really hate doing sound, whatever. Not that I hate doing sound, but you know what I mean? Like, I really like this. And you're in college to explore that, you know, and who knows where it leads. But both of them, Mike and my dad, don't like editing, and I love it, you know, but they love different aspects of everything we do. But we all kind of had our moments with it to see what turned us on.
You're right, Dave. And in fact, when young people ask me, I tell them in your 20s, do everything. And what starts to happen is there's a filter going on, and it's the filter of like or not like. And then you can adjust as you go. And what is interesting, which you don't realize at the time, is you're filling a bag with experience. And that experience will be used throughout your entire lifetime. It's amazing that anything you put in that bag, it's not wasted. And what is interesting, by the time you're in your late 20s, you're starting to understand where your passion is. And if you're very lucky, you've created connections that have allowed you to express that passion in some form. And that's how it all begins. And then you want to pursue it. But nobody except some very exceptional talent knows exactly what it is they want to do, because life is ever changing and you have to reinvent yourself all the time.
I'll kind of jump in on that. And you guys are kind of saying this, but like, really figure out what you don't like, because like, you don't have to be in something that you're incredibly passionate about, that you love, but make sure it's something that you enjoy at least, or you can tolerate, because you can accrue skills over time and sort of like adjust as you accrue these skills. Like I do sound, it's like no different than being like a carpenter or something. So you don't have to monetize every skill that you have. So like if you're a carpenter, you can make chairs for yourself, you can make a dinner table for yourself and be happy doing that. But you can also take that skill out into the real world and make money from it. But just like any skill, you gotta pay your dues first. So just like make sure it's something that isn't going to make you miserable, because obviously if you're doing something that makes you miserable, you're gonna have to start over. So basically, any skill that you have, you're gonna have to go out there and pay your dues. Like you're gonna have to be the PA on set who gets everybody coffee. You're gonna have to start at the bottom. So make sure you know that you're headed somewhere, I would say. But don't worry about it in a sense of like, I picked the wrong thing, or I don't know what I'm doing. Like start doing something. And what you'll find out along the way is, as you're paying your dues, you might figure out very early on that you don't like it. And that's almost just as valuable as figuring out if you do like it. But like, know that what you pick is like, you're going to have to start at the bottom and you're going to have to get better at it. But the thing is, as it goes on, it gets easier and you make more and more money. For instance, when I started out doing sound, I had so many terrible jobs where I had to do a million things. I'd get on set and they would just treat me like, okay, you have to mix the sound, but all right, you have to set the lights. You have to, go get us lunch. And it was terrible. And now I get paid peanuts. But then as I went along and got more skilled, I got jobs that are very well paid, and they're actually easier than the jobs I did starting out, what were very low paid. So it's all about experience. And as you accrue experience, and you will make mistakes, but that's good. Like you should, like if you can make mistakes and it doesn't feel like it destroys you, because it will when you make a mistake, you will get by it and you will learn from it and you will get through it. So like where I'm at in my career isn't by accident. I pushed through a lot of terrible jobs, a lot of hard work, made a lot of mistakes, but eventually it taught me how to do it right and taught me what I like and where I want to be. And that's how I'm here.
I mean, I can add into what Mike's saying. I mean, even for myself, getting out of a live theater performer, even just theater completely, and wanting to go into a different field. I mean, there was definitely, you're going to have these times where you feel like nothing's happening. And the best tool I had at the time was to be able to say, just write, whether it's a spec script, whatever it is, just keep writing it, because it keeps filling you with whatever creative thing. And as Mike said, I was good to do it older because I did PA briefly on Elementary on CBS during that time. And very quickly, because I was a little older and had some more experience, said, this is not going to get me to being a director. This is not going to get me to being a writer. I want to work above the line as, a creative, and nothing wrong with working below the line. I actually don't really enjoy the term, but I think that it just taught me right away, like, oh, okay, this is what this does. That's what this does. And that's part of the learning process. And it's okay to go away from it and be like, a PA is not going to get me what I want. But I have to admit, I learned something from doing it. And everybody said, I would ask them on set, I'd say, what do you do? How do you become a director? Like, someone told me documentaries. Someone else told me put a film in Sundance. Someone else said, oh, direct 3 major motion pictures and then join DGA. And I just said, oh, I get it. None of you know. None of you know.
I think it was Werner. Like I saw this interview with Werner Herzog, and he had the best answer for whether you are something or not, because they were asking him, like, how do you? They're asking the same question, like, how do you become a director? And he just said, direct a movie, and you're a director, and that's true.
Exactly.
But it's all up to what? Are you just trying to make money and get by? Because there are directing jobs that do that. Do you just want to, make home movies for yourself? There's like lots of different aspects to this, but you really got to ask yourself as you go along where you want to be and what are you working towards, because it's not always about money and it's not always about status, or you got to ask yourself like what it's about. But like, I don't know, when you're out of college, like I didn't start in production out of college. I had many jobs out of college, and eventually I realized that my skill set and the schedule that I wanted and the freedom to do things was in production. So that's how I ended up there. And
Yep. But both of you created networks from what you were doing. You were meeting people because you were doing something. And then those connections and that network is where you wanted to be. And what so many students don't understand, it's our responsibility to tell people why they should hire us. No one is going to come and find us. We have to find them and tell them why they should hire us. And what is interesting is that every job and every position that you have creates another circle of networking. For instance, Michael, when you got onto Ghost Adventures, how did that happen? Okay, so you do sound for Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel.
Oh, it's on Discovery Plus now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they
Keep
just
changing.
switched. It's all right. They just switched, and they would be
all
mad at
over
me.
Discovery Plus. Trust me.
We are number one on Discovery Plus. I will say the number one
All
show.
right.
They would want.
But how did you start doing sound for them?
It's really serendipitous. Like you start out, and I would say even before like I got to there, I had to tell people I was a sound guy and that I was no longer a PA. So I got like one sound job, and then I just started telling people I was a sound guy, and then I was like, oh crap, like I have to be a sound guy now, because I started getting jobs as a sound guy telling people I did sound. But basically, I did a job, and the guy really liked me, and he was the production manager of Ghost Adventures. And then when he quit, they needed a sound guy, and he recommended it to the current production manager of Ghost Adventures, and he had me on one shoot. And apparently, I guess they had really bad sound guys, because within the first 15 minutes of the shoot, we go outside, and the host says, "Hey, everybody, do we like Mike? I like Mike." And everybody said, "Yeah." And then now, 6 years later, I'm the sound supervisor for Ghost Adventures.
Great. And talk about circles. Ghost Adventure did a show from the Comedy Store in LA where we performed. So
That's
Michael was able to get on the stage where we performed 1,000 years ago and see what we were experiencing at the time.
If you have Discovery Plus, by the way, this Friday, I'm going to have some music featured in the episode. It's about Graham Parsons and Joshua Tree, and I have some music in the episode, so check it out.
Very cool.
I have to
Very cool. I love that you all talked about networking and connections, because I think for me, I tell my students all the time, when you meet somebody, present yourself well, get their information, contact them through, the socials, LinkedIn, and get yourself out there. And I think one of the main things, and maybe this just ties back, or I'm asking maybe for since all of you are in the, professional status of how can they kind of get their foot in the door? What are some tips and tricks? I'm always asked about, I really want to get my feet wet. I want to get an internship. What do I need to have? What do I need to do? What do you see on your end that you're looking looking for to acquire some of these internships to begin their networking, their net worth of networking. I say networking is all about your net worth. So does anybody want to chime in on that?
Well,
I mean,
there are
you wanna-
local companies. Let me just throw this in, Dave, and then you can
middle
have it.
kid, it's okay. It's all right.
Okay. There are companies in Philadelphia which are production houses, and one should get a production magazine or whatever and find out where they are. For instance, there was one on Walnut Street called Center City Video that's been there for a very, very long time. And they take in, PAs for the first time. And you can break in at a place like that. And that's where you want people to know that you're interested and you're willing and you're able to work at the very beginning. Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, honestly, in the beginning of time of my dance career, when I only had one foot, basically, we were trying to figure out what to do to make some extra money right when I was getting out of college, right? I'd done a dance company that paid some money, but we were just kind of, what's your side gig? And so they said, you should teach, that's your skill. We kind of started there. And my dad always talks about the story of cold calling and emailing 25 different, dance studios from Long Island to New York. I mean, there's this whole system here in New York because you're close to North Jersey and everything. And one got back to me and one hired me as a substitute. I did not have a permanent teaching job there. The next job actually came from finding out where they were posting auditions, which they had 2 big dance centers here. So any of those similar things, like where are they posting this information? And it's all online now, right? What's safe? I mean, make sure it's not a weird Craigslist thing. That sort of like make sure they're going to be posting jobs that you can kind of apply to, and maybe you go through 1 or 2 and you go like, no, this is not the level I'm going to work at. I also think when you're out, much like what Mike said, I had a moment when the first time I was switching to choreography and I was hanging out with Mike, and I said, well, how do I let people know that I'm a choreographer? And he said, you tell them. And that was it. And I was like, yeah. So now in this switch, it was the same thing of what you learn. You're rebranding yourself. And right now you're actually branding yourself in the first sense. So be confident with it. Know that you're not going to know everything when you're talking to them, but try not to sound that way. Just be confident and ask questions too. People like to hire people they like. So also listen. Listening is a big thing because you want to be able to, I find, being able to joke, have charm, and recall things that they're already telling you that, you can say like you just said, elevator pitch, like you take that one up and you kind of just keep putting it in the book. And it doesn't mean you want to sound like a know-it-all or not, but later on, this starts to make you feel like you're part of the team. And very funny, on my last day working with elementary, we were out in Queens and the first AD asked me why I didn't turn around to block people from coming into this, the PA stand there to tell people, hey, don't come into the shot. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was doing it all wrong. And he said, look, you got it. And he put his thing down. He's like, you got to get like this. You got to move around. You got to block them. And suddenly there's a whole rapport that we were going on, that started to form us as a team. And the more comfortable you can be wherever you're starting, it helps. And present yourself as best you can. Know that your cold calls to me are like, it's a relationship like auditioning. You're just going to roll the dice. Think of it as a job. It's a job, right? Don't think that you're going to get every job. You just keep putting it out there, get your system down, get your motivation down, and keep doing it. And something will come along as you're still learning your experiences. And it's like right time, right place is always seems to be what happened. And I don't know what happens with me, but I met somebody else. We kind of hung out at the same place. We didn't realize that we had so much in common. It happened to be that he's trying to get a show up to be a producer on a television show. I'm getting my stuff together. He has connections. And then he also managed, he was a booking agent for Moscow Ballet. So then my dance experience related to him, he was in the band Afghan Wigs. So it was all the stuff that's come together from my career and knowing music from Mike and my dad. And so just start. that was the best advice too. I got that from another director. I said, I want to be a director. What do I do? He said, go direct. So I just started. And for me, an easy way to start, guys, if you want to do any of this, think trailer. There's so much social media content out there. 1 or 2 minute video. You do not have to make a feature unless you're, dead set on being in Sundance and you want that or whatever it is. But you can make these small things and it's all going to build up. And then suddenly you have a reel. Suddenly you have something to show. And it does start to get there. So I think we all can agree on the same thing of like, just do, just do. And the world will tell you if this job sucks or not, so.
David, there was a moment in your career when you wanted to stop dancing and choreograph and produce. And you and I talked and we came up because you had certain choreographic things that you had done. And we put them together in a show called What Guys Do. And it was funny because it was all about the male vision of the world. And what you did was to call on Michael and his band to play live. And then because you had a show, you went and talked to people who owned a theater, and we did an off-Broadway show of your show with Michael singing live, you having, I don't know, how many dancers did you have, 10?
We had about 10 dancers, and this is a great connection story. I hung out at I know I shouldn't say it at the bar, but I was hanging out at Finnerty's. It's an Irish pub. I met a bouncer who was part of the old hardcore scene, and maybe some of you guys know who the Dead Milkmen are, but his wife was in the November Rain video as the cello player. I mean, like, just got along so much. And he said, you should meet my friend Laura. She has a space. I thought he meant like a downtown loft space where, people dance with cats and try to explain existentialism or something. So I was just like, okay, whatever. And they said, oh, she's playing down the street at Otto's Drunken Heads. Her band's name is called Mongrel Bitch. And I went, okay. Well, right. And so I go down, I see her play. They're like old 70s punk. They're all in their, gotta have to be in their mid 40s by then. We met, we hit it off. She said, come down and see the space. And I was like, all right, I'll go and explore. And it turned out to be the Bleecker Street Theater that she worked in promotion and music promotion with another guy. They bought the theater. They had Seinfeld produced a show that went on there for a long time with Colin Quinn. And so there was some stuff happening and we tried some stuff and it ended up being that I was like, well, can I just work with you guys and do my own off-Broadway show? And they said yes. And I wanted to add that to what Mike said, that he's composed music for me for years as a choreographer. And what was great about that is that we always knew each other's lexicon because we listened to a lot of same stuff. And I remember specifically saying, I need spaghetti Western, needs Metallica's Unforgiven. And Mike would go and write it because Mike loves Marconi. And so it was just this like, yeah, so that was one of those moments too, where I feel like we've always had this chance to try to support each other, no matter how many times we may annoy each other as family. But, at the end of the day, we all have kind of taken this time because we recognize each other's talents. And we try to do things for Allie, but she has her own. She seems to be kind of working it all out on her own. She's in charge of everything, is what I say.
I heard Allie did some great theater and acting and dancing in her youth. So somehow she's connected creative.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
She says she's not so creative. But
Allie was the funniest. She was the funniest. Yes, sir.
I think there's some creative juices in there. But what I really liked that you had all said in your pieces is that, you have to get out there and be creative, think creative, do something different, like just go and do. And I think that's very interesting. But what I think that my question is, and maybe we'll start off with Michael because he's the oldest, is how did you start off being creative? Do you think it helped you be creative being in this family and being around and growing up, with a father that was in stand-up comedy and then doing advertising and, then presenting himself in front of people? Like, how was that? And then how did that kind of, develop into what you're doing today?
Well, I mean, growing up we always heard the stories, you know, the myths, of my mom and my dad performing, and I can't, like, I imagine it's like any other family. Like if your dad's a plumber, you're just probably going to know things about plumbing as you grow up. So like my dad was a comedian, so he would talk to me about doing comedy, and we would watch comedy. I'm sure in a much different way than most families watched it, where he would be like dissecting the jokes of like, you know, the setup and the thing is the surprise at the end, and that's the punchline. And so there was things that I learned very early on that made me really comfortable getting up in front of people and talking to them. And you know, and it's a thing. It's the same thing. Like I would imagine another family with different expertise, like that just rubs off on you growing up. And at a certain point, you can decide to go a different route. You know, I could have been a scientist or something, but
how did it inspire you? Was there like a moment, let's say in your youth or when you were older, where you were deciding maybe what to do about schooling or what you wanted to do? Was there like that moment when you were like, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I was inspired by that?
well, I mean, through high school and college, I was very back and forth with what I wanted to do. But I think at some point I realized like I just had an aptitude for music, like a knack for writing music. And, you know, in college, I think I had dreams of being in a band and making lots of money, maybe touring the world and doing things like that. And I certainly did that. I certainly was in a band and we certainly toured and released records. But I think at a certain point, that was unfulfilling for me. But it was something that came naturally that because of my background, I was like, I can do this. It wasn't, I never had the sense growing up that if I wanted to play music in any way, shape, or form, that my parents weren't like, you shouldn't do this. You know, they in a lot of ways they were really good about it, because they were like, if you want to do this, you have to figure out how you can do this. So they were like, you're gonna need a job, because if you go out and do music, you're not gonna have money to support yourself right away. So at least I had these things in my brain of like, okay, I have to figure out how to make money, because if I'm trying to build a career making music, I'm not going to get money doing that right out of college. So that's where audio engineering came in, because I realized that because of playing music, I knew how to record. I knew how recording worked, and I knew a lot of things about just like the nuts and bolts of audio. So what I was able to do, because my dad was in the biz, I was able to go to a lot of these production houses when I was like 25, because I tried a lot of jobs before then. But when I was like 25, I went and I was like, I want to do sound. So they're like, well, first you got to like, you know, carry the stuff. And so that's basically how I had my in, was like, I know this guy, you know, and he does production, and because I grew up around production, we'd have shoots at our house. I knew what to do with lights. I knew what to do with a camera. I fell into it very easily, because I had already had all this experience and I didn't even realize it at the time. But I mean,
And Michael, you spent 5 years with your Uncle Tony, who is a cameraman for Fox News and Good Morning
right,
America.
when I moved to New York. But I think at that point I'd already been doing sound for maybe half a year, so it was like not as daunting a task for me, or you know, it was like something that I felt like I could do and I was much more confident about. But when I first jumped in, I was working at Whole Foods and I hated it. And I was like, okay, I have to do something that is more in line with my talents. And actually, then I started teaching at the Paul Green School of Rock in Cherry Hill. And that started to give me more confidence that I could do something with my expertise. And then after that, I started doing a lot of PAing with, I think I worked on like Trading Spaces and shows like that, like a lot of HGTV kind of makeover shows. But it put me in the world. And once I was there, because because I would say like a lot of times like the hardest thing is to get your foot in the door first. Like that first job is always the hardest one to get. But then once you get that first job, you start to expand your circle and people start to know you a little bit, and then you can expand from there. But the hardest thing to do is to get that first job, and like what to say to people and who you know and how to present yourself. Because it's not always the most natural thing to you because you're not part of the world yet. You know, you don't know the lexicon, you don't know how to behave, you don't know how to carry yourself. So it's it's always daunting when you're starting out. But I will say that like my parents made that a possibility for me. Like I never thought a career in the arts was not possible from them. Where a lot of my friends were like, you're crazy. Like that's, you know, why don't you just get a degree in business or something? And, you know, I went to St. Joe's. A lot of my friends majored in food marketing and still do.
Yeah, and I think that's something too. Like a lot of my students are like, you know, I want to take TV production or I want to take editing, but you know, my parents are telling me I have to go for business or I have to go for a liberal arts degree or I have to go for, you know, computer science. I mean, you name it. I have students from, you know, every major sometimes taking my classes because they have this, you know, knack or this, you know, this urge that they like you said about this creativity that they want to like produce something or do something, but their parents, you know, might say, well, like you said, you need something to fall back on. Did you want to chime in, Dave, about you know, growing up, you know, in the family and kind of where you're at now and how that inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, there was a difference between Mike and I. I mean, him as the older brother, I kind of got a chance to watch what not to do. And there's a difference. But I got heavily into theater at a pretty young age, was doing sports, and I was going into Philly, and they were very, you know, I did all the Dolly Dinkle sort of local dance school thing, and something happened with one studio, and parents, once again, from that experience, my dad said, let's get you on the stage. You want to be on the stage. So the closest thing was to go into Philly. You have a city right there. And this is actually great that we're talking to Rowan students. I mean, it's right there. You have access to these things. And I ended up in this company called the Rainbow Company in like 1992. And they would bring white kids from the suburbs, black kids from the inner city, and we would do hip hop operas at middle schools around the city. And I met Rennie Harris through that, who's a big hip hop person in Philly. And that started to lead me down my own path because the influence of their stories was always great. But Mike said, like, it's like knowing what a pipe is, you know, or, you know, we just knew threes were funny. Fives are sometimes funny. Like, you know, we knew the guy punches a horse in Blazing Saddles. So it always helped us. I was doing my first show in New York when I was a senior in college. So I put on my first rock ballet as my like senior thesis. And the ballet guy who was mentoring me, who used to work with American Comedy Ballet, the company that doesn't exist anymore. I told him, I said, it's like a Foster Brooks. And he said, you know who Foster Brooks is? And I said, yeah, doesn't everybody? He said, no, not everybody knows who Foster Brooks is. And if you don't know, he was an old comedian who never drank, but always his shtick was to be drunk on stage. So those things influenced. And for me, it always sounded like when I was younger that they had just stopped. And I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to prove that I could do it. I wanted to prove that I was talented enough to be in front and go further than what their career was. And I mean, that's the way I thought at a much younger age. But being in New York, getting out of Jersey, that was first thing first. I want to be where I have to be, where it's actually happening. And I can honestly say after 20 years in New York that it is a city, if you are thinking about it, that have a reason to be here. If not, it is a difficult city to live in because you'll thrive off of the fact of you're here for a reason, whether it's your business, your aspiration, whatever it is. And you'll put up with small apartments, the high rent, but you'll feel fulfilled because you're here. And I've seen people come and go over so many years in this city. So, and that's okay too. But, you know, maybe Philly's better for you. Maybe LA is a better place for you. it doesn't. Atlanta, I just got back from Atlanta visiting my fiance's parents. My fiance is a performer, actress, comedian, everything. And Atlanta is now becoming this gigantic hub of the film industry. They're building the biggest film studio in the state, and it's an old GM plant, and that's going in. So, but now because I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm listening and I'm going, oh, there's another market. Oh, there's another market. The other thing is too, don't let so many different markets and so many different pieces of advice make you think you have to do all of them. I think Mike said something that was interesting, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but as I'm kind of in the second round of my career, I'm like just pushing out everything where people are like, well, you could do this to make money. You could do that. You know what? Jobs come along, and the editing has been a gold mine because you don't realize people don't know how to edit their videos. You think they do, but they don't really know how to use a system like Premiere Pro. And maybe they're not interested in it. So that's a way to make money. Writing, but doing it for clients is a way to make money. But I know I want to do narrative. I know I want to do film series. And so this time around, I'm just much more honed in to what I'm doing. And when you find it, know that you're working toward that. There was an article I read about directing commercials, right? And wouldn't it be great? And, and at the end of the article, the producer who wrote the article said, but if your goal is to be a feature or TV director, don't work so hard at becoming a commercial director. This is its own business. It's hard. Yes, you make a lot of money, but you're probably going to get pulled away from the thing you actually wanted to do. So work toward that thing, whatever it is that you want to do, and have that focus. And if not, then find something else you like and do that as part of the production thing,
Let me just throw in this, raising these guys. It was very important to us as parents that they understood what came before. So if you want to be a musician, you got to know the Beatles. You have to know other creative people and what they have done, so you don't think that what you're done has never been done before. I know when I was in comedy, they would say there were only 7 jokes, and they just kept being told over and over and over again in a different way. So these guys understood the foundations of comedy. If you said Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton or other comedians, they would understand that, and then they understood style. So David wanted to bring a certain style to his dance. He knew Lauren Hardy, and he knew what that style was, and he could frame it. Michael understood the Stones, Beatles, and he understood how they wrote their music. And then when he wants to write his music, that's the foundations you jump off of. And so that you're not creating something that's never been done before.
And I love that you said about like knowing where they're coming from and immersing yourself in all of these, specifics of what they want to do. And, we're talking to students here. How important is it, whether it's the students going for video or the students getting, a history major or an education major, and all of you have an educational background. I mean, Tom, you're now, faculty, you've been faculty at many different places, you teach. Tell me how important it is for students to get an education and then get out there.
It's interesting. If you look at our degrees, my degree is sociology. Michael's degree is philosophy. Now, all of them contribute to our creativity, because in understanding how you deal with information and how people react to information, that's what you learn in college. How do you take in a lot of information and make sense of it? And then how do you do research to find out something? That's a very important tool to understand. And
I also have a degree in dance, by the way.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And now you're a director. Yes, you are.
I was going to say, like all of this creative stuff, it's a skill. It's a skill like carpentry is a skill.
Yes.
but you need to have a point of view to create something, which is why I like that I majored in philosophy, because I could have all the skill in the world and be the best, guitar player, the best composer or whatever. But then if I didn't have any ideas of like what to do with it, I wouldn't be able to make anything. It's
Well,
like, yeah, like being I always say it's like, it's like being a painter. Like you can be very skilled as a painter, but you have to know what to paint. So
yeah,
You have to find, yes, you have to find your voice, is what they say. Do
like,
you have something to say?
well, and
yeah,
also think about too with screenplay writing or things like that, or even in dance, there's a lot of structure that you learn throughout the process of it. But the goal is to say that these are just tools. I see people on screenplay groups and stuff that I'm a part of ask the same question over and over again. And what happens is everyone kind of tells them the same thing. In a spec script, if you are just trying to sell the idea, write it any way you want. It doesn't matter. You could do it in ones and zeros. And if the producers understood what was happening and loved it and wanted to produce it, they would. So as you gather all this information. There was a year where I took poetry, European art, and I think it was like music composition. All that stuff, it just funnels into your head so that whether you want to express it in dance or you want to express it in film, it all comes part of what that idea is so that you are a better creative. And the biggest thing as you move on is to trust yourself as a creative, to trust yourself in whatever you're doing and listen to that voice. 9 times out of 10, if you're trying to make something that is completely woke, is really to this genre, it'll just come out contrived. So write, or look at and create things that or work within those things so that it's genuine as we, are discussing creativity.
but like also there's like a flip side to that, which is like you don't like if you have these skills, if you know how to edit, if I'm like an audio engineer, if you have those skills, you don't necessarily have to have a grand vision if you don't want to. You can just do work for people. Like this is just like a work. Like I don't know. I keep bringing up a plumber, but like I'm an audio engineer. If people need sound recorded and edited, I can certainly do that, and I don't need to have this grand artistic vision to do that. Like these are just skills, and you can use them how you like in your life. Whether you choose to make tons of money, whether you want to be a famous director, or whether you just want to, I do a lot of like post-production work for Condé Nast, and a lot of it is for their online Epicurious videos where I'm literally I do the EQ on a voice and then I take a fan noise out of it. And it's not really creative, but it pays really well. And, I'd rather be doing that, and it's like, and I don't need a grand artistic vision to do that. Like these are skills and they can take you places and they can do a lot for you. And you don't have to be a highfalutin artist with a grand vision to do that. But
That's true. But
we all what I call have a side hustle, so it's okay. We're all good. But and I love that you keep bringing up the word creative and innovative, and I just want to segue to this past year. It's been really tough in the beginning when everything was shut down for COVID, and I think though it was a really powerful year for a lot of creatives to kind of look at things differently. Maybe like shift direction of what they're doing or immerse themselves in maybe learning something new. What have you been doing, I guess, in the last year that has kind of flipped the script or changed what you were originally doing? So pre-COVID to now during COVID, and now hopefully we're going to be getting out of COVID. But what have you been doing in the last year that really kind of took your production or yourself to the next level in your profession?
let me start this one. It was very interesting because having been in the classroom, I really thought that online teaching would not change behavior. And what I discovered over the last year, that if you understand this medium, if you understand what to do with the camera, if you understand the sound, you can have an effect on people. I did a workshop in November for 13 people, 2 days, 8 hours each day on presentation skills. It was fabulous. I learned how to stand and present. I learned how to change stimuli often. I learned and did improv with the people in the class, and it was wonderful. And what I learned was that when you do improv, it makes you mindful and you are present. A lot of people, when they do a presentation, have their self-talk talking to them, and they make mistakes and they feel, inadequate. When you're doing improv and you had 13 people on the screen, they didn't know which was going to go next. So everyone paid attention and they were present and they threw it around. And it was quite amazing to see the change in behavior online in a workshop. So I'm a firm believer, and then have coached other people where I could not have coached them because the space or where they were located was too far apart. And I couldn't travel between them, but I could do it online. So that's what it has really taught me, that this medium, and believe it or not, I write a lot of articles on LinkedIn. I say, if you're online, you're on TV. And if you don't know how to act on TV, you better learn, because people are watching you, and the way you convey your message determines how you act in front of the camera. How many Zoom zombies have we seen? They don't move and they just stare. And suddenly, if you're aware of that, you do listening techniques, like your head's to the side. You're saying, yes, I'm responding to you. That's what this environment demands. And it's really interesting. I think there's great potential. And the other thing, and both you guys can talk to this, everyone has access right now. YouTube. You can do your own YouTube channel, whatever you think you want to do. And you can create something and put it up. And we all know people who have gotten heavy network and series, having first had the series and their episodes on YouTube. So what are you guys?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that happened over the pandemic was, I don't know if you were following the story, but Bon Appetit melted down. It was a whole thing during the George Floyd protests, and their CEO had some sort of racist Halloween costume, and blah, blah, blah. So what happened was everybody had left Bon Appetit, and I'd been working at Bon Appetit for a while before the pandemic, doing a lot of their shows. And I was very close with one of the talent there. And so she ended up going off and wanting to do her own YouTube series. So we started shooting it, and I ended up doing most of the music for it, and some sound design, and I record all the sound for it. And now we're about to shoot season 4, and it's been really successful. I mean, it's been one of the top trending shows on YouTube for a while. And each episode has been getting, over 1 million views, which is really cool. Also, yeah, I started a podcast network because we were bored, because I didn't work for 5 months because nobody could be in person. And most of my job before the pandemic was in person. So we just, me and Dave and 2 of our old friends were like, let's do a podcast. We'll watch, movies we saw growing up and then talk about them. And then it just sort of started expanding because we.
What's it called?
It's called the Up in Your Ear Podcast Network. The podcast is called Does It Suck Now? ? Because we decide whether it does suck now. And then it just sort of expanded from there, because once I learned about podcasting and how to distribute a podcast and record and edit and then record over Zoom, which was, I think, our first episodes, the audio quality wasn't that great because we were just learning. But over time, we learned, I learned how to sort of get isolated tracks, and if I can get into the weeds, isolated tracks, and people got better mics, and we just learned how to speak better and what was better for the format. The podcast improved, and then I took on another podcast by the record label that my band is on called the Aquaman Records podcast. And then now I do a podcast called Three Things with Maggie and Mike with a woman who is a journalist for like, she used to write for like Spin and a lot of music magazines. And just sort of expanded from there. We took on a bunch of shows. And I kind of didn't expect to be there. And then the post-production really expanded a lot because it was a lot easier to do remote work over the podcast, or over the pandemic. So, Dave,
how about you?
Jumping in here. Hey, Brooke. Hey, guys. We so actually what was interesting is right before this was before the pandemic hit, there was a comedy sketch pilot that I had written and we were about to produce. I had a executive producer hire me to do it, and it all fell through, obviously, because of everything that was happening and some corporate clients. And the weird thing is the side hustle of teaching dance all went to Zoom. So we all had to learn what that meant, teaching physically with kids. We figured out that teaching 5-year-olds sounds like, Laura, this way. Okay, you left the room. All right, bye. Okay, your parents are paying for this, whatever. You know what so there was a lot of learning curve, and the editing was the biggest thing for me, because one of the dance studios decided they were going to do all their stuff remotely. And finally I'd said enough that, guys, I do this for a living. And they finally went, oh, right. And so we had to figure out for all the kids to shoot on their cell phones while we're working with them on Zoom. They would shoot on their cell phones, and we'd say, well, I need like chest up, full body, feet, and then any of your B-roll. I don't care, whatever opening or ending you're trying to create. And then I ended up editing and having a complete crash course in Premiere Pro because it had to work. And how do we manipulate the footage? So then once I got comfortable with the system and finished that project, it was great, because then I went, oh, I'm going to go back and redo everything else I was already doing. And then I wrote another 2 scripts, I think, over this time. And we did, we're going to do a trailer for the newest one, which is an action fantasy. It's an undercover agent on tour with a Disney kids show hunting Japanese demons who possess Muppets. So that is the log line, even though the log line's a little long right now. But it gave me confidence to start doing easier special effects with Premiere Pro, so that I had control over the process of being able to shoot lightning out of your eyes, and how to motion track, and how to figure out how to manipulate those things. And at the end of the day, yes, you may use other people to do that, but I was like, I'll save money on a project if I already know how to do it. And you can use that in other formats. So, that's kind of like what's going on now. And hopefully the other 2 shows are getting some love from the producers, and we'll see how that works out. So that's been the year. Oh, the fiance went into voiceover, so we got a good mic. So,
David, how many shows of those end concerts with the kids did you edit together?
I did 16 videos.
Wow.
Which made the dance school successful, because they could sell tickets online for the end concert.
I kept telling them, I'm being nice, and this is underpriced for what it is.
Sure.
But I edited 24 hours a day for about 3 weeks. I almost lost my mind.
So we've been talking, and I want to kind of segue to one of my last questions. But first, I thought some of the really cool things that I didn't think I was going to hear tonight: Afghan Wigs, Dead Milkman, November Rain, Japanese Demon Muppets.
Yeah. Onis.
But these are all very interesting things I never thought I'd all hear in one call. Very fun. But before we leave, I'd love everybody to know kind of if everybody could just name 3 things. I know there's probably more than 3 things. Could everybody name 3 things of what they're working on right now into the future that's kind of, got you going right now? 3 things of what you're doing. So Dave, why don't you tell us?
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Me.
Yeah, what's sizzling?
Let me tell you more about me.
Okay.
So, yeah, really, the getting into shooting this trailer is exciting me a lot because I obviously from the dance world, and I know a lot of actors and people. And finishing another script actually about my brother's experience, a comedy script about him living with our two friends we do the podcast with. They lived in South Philly for a couple years, and finishing up that comedy and a couple editing jobs coming up. That became a whole new market this year. So it's everything feels really positive. It's just we're all waiting to see what happens with the pandemic. So hopefully we can push forward with the positive energy is what I'm trying to preach, you know.
Great. How about you, Michael?
Well, Three Things is the name of my podcast that I do. It's me and this woman, Maggie Sirota, and we have guests, and we literally just talk about three things, which are like any three things that are on our mind. So listen to that. That's on Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. Also the shows that I've done, like you can watch Ghost Adventures, and Dessert Person with Claire Saffitz. That's been really fun to do. And then I just wrapped work on a record. I just finished mixing with like a ton of people that I worked with remotely over the pandemic, from like all over the country and actually even Mexico too. So that should be out at some point in the next few months. Yeah, and just I don't know, I guess follow me on Twitter or something if you want to find out what's going on with my life, because I do tend to post what's happening there with music and TV and whatever else.
Awesome.
Podcast.
Awesome. And Tom, how about you? What's on?
Well,
What's
I have a band. I have a band called Tom Guggino and Friends, and you can look us up on Facebook. And it's three guys, and we just got a gig again. So we're playing on the 24th, and it's so much fun to come back. And I play and sing, and have a bass player and a harmonica player, and we do blues and folk. And there's nothing more fun than that. And really pursuing the aspect of changing behavior online. And I never thought that the skills of being a performer, comedy on stage, and learning how audience react and how people's self-interest is so important, that it's everything the way that corporations now are communicating and how communicating is changing to another level. So your communication and production people could be incredibly valuable coming because of the changes that are happening that the corporations themselves don't know and will need skills to help them. And I think that's incredibly important to do it. And also you can go to my website, presentconnect.net, and check that out. I have my articles on there and the videos and interviews, and there's the book. You can pick that up at Amazon, Present Connect. And it has a lot of good stuff and good comic stories from when I was a performer of how I learned when you watch. One story was I watched a comic at Catch a Rising Star in New York, and the audience was going crazy, laughing at him. And there was one guy in the front that was not laughing. The comedian noticed him and started doing his entire act for this guy who never laughed. Now, when he came off the stage, he said, "Oh, Christ, I bombed." And we all went, "What? You missed one of your best performances, and 99.9% of the people all laughed at you, but all you saw was that one guy rejecting you." That was an incredible insight into how you cannot evaluate yourself when you're performing. You can't. You have to ignore it, do the performance, and then look back later. It's things like that that are incredibly important when you want to communicate and have a clear message. So yes, and this has been great fun. Thank you, Brooke. I really appreciate treating us like a mafioso family. You know?
I got the cannoli.
Hey.
One more quick story. I ended up working for Jim Jarmusch on his last movie, The Dead Don't Die. Mike had worked on the Stooges documentary for Jim Jarmusch. All of it came from Mike playing in bands, right? And knowing Carter, a friend of his who worked for Jim, and such a random act. So look out for those sorts of things. You really don't know where it's going to come from. I literally got a phone call when they were all sitting around and they're like, how do we get all the zombies in this movie to move the same way? Does anyone know a choreographer? Anyone know a choreographer? Carter went, Dave, call Dave. Yeah, but we want a choreographer. It's not a choreographer. And they said, just call Dave. And it just ended up working out that way from all of our friendships and all our connections. So think about that too. It builds, and suddenly you're like, people are like, that's amazing. And I'm like, I still have no idea how that really happened, even though I kind of know. But that's how random everything you're going to get involved with this as you guys get into your careers is going to be. And I would say enjoy it. You don't know where you're going to end up. So just remember to enjoy it. And I used to micromanage the hell out of myself with my dance career and my body improvement. Don't do it. Do exactly what Papa G over here was saying. You know, take time and be stupid. Whatever you're trying to do, give yourself 6 months, then evaluate. Give yourself a year, then evaluate. Because if not, you'll drive yourself crazy. Trust me, it's not worth the time.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you for coming on tonight and, you know, sharing your passion, your stories. You know, the word of the night was connect. I'll push your book again. Thank you so much for sending this to me. This has been great. You know, and I loved that even when we talked and we had our pre-interview that we all had so many different connections. And I also want to thank Allie. I know she's been on here kind of listening, that I think it was one welcome back morning breakfast at RCBC that we talked, and she's like, yeah, my dad did like camera and advertising and my brothers are in the industry. And I'm like, yeah, okay, put that on my back burner someday. And I'm so glad that this finally came to. So again, it's all about, like you said, striking up the conversations, keeping the connections open, presenting yourself well, you know, be the active listener. So I really want to thank all of you again for being here tonight. And I'm sure we'll all connect again on some different level, maybe podcasting. Tom maybe helping me on my dissertation when I go up to present for my dissertation. And you know, it's been great. So again, thank you everyone who's on this call. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Stay well. And if you guys send me all your info and your contact, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, all your stuff, I will post this with the recording, and the students can come and you know, ask you some questions if they have follow-up and stay connected with you. So it's been great.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, please visit rcbc.edu, and you can find the major entertainment technologies if you're interested in the AAS degree in video and digital media or sound recording engineering that has a direct 2+2 pathway to Rowan University. And can't wait to see you guys hopefully back on campus in the fall. Stay safe, everyone. Thanks so much. Take care.